The Toyota War is a conflict mostly known through memes in the history community, but other than that, it's barely spoken about at all. Personally, I think this war is not only not recognized enough, but also a hilarious concept. While most wars were fought with artillery, tanks, and planes, the Toyota War, as its name suggests, was fought with Toyota pickup trucks. To fully understand the Toyota War, we need to understand the Chadian Civil War that came before it. That dated back to the year 1965. Africa had finally been decolonized, and the Central African nation of Chad found itself embroiled in the Civil War. Previously a French colony, a mix of French and Chadian soldiers controlled the nation. Rebels were unhappy with the oppressive government led by Francois Tombalbaye, the president of Chad at the time. Francois was a controversial figure, deposing and imprisoning enemies, showing favoritism to certain figures, and what is debatably his most egregious act is banning all political parties that were not his. Revolts were attempted many times, but all were quickly stopped by Francois' government, until, of course, the 1st of November 1965, when a massive riot broke out in southern Chad. This would see 10 public officials killed, along with 500 civilians, marking the start of the 1965 Chadian Civil War. From that date forward, the revolts would increase in number and intensity, and by 1966, the riots would spread to eastern Chad. The same year, the Frelonats, or the National Liberation Front of Chad, would form as an official resistance group. Other resistance groups began to form at the same time. It was around this point that Libya, who had claimed this part of northern Chad, showed secret support for the Frelonat. However, it was kept a secret as the king of Libya did not want war with the French, who were backing Francois' government. Libya would donate weapons to the front, but did not participate in the warfare. Suddenly, however, a coup was staged in Libya, and the monarchy was replaced with a dictatorship. The new leader of Libya showed a much greater amount of support for the rebels, and Frelonat became one of the most powerful forces in the area for a time. Libya would make enemies with the official Chadian government this way, and this would last for a long time. As the rebellion grew larger and more powerful, Tombalbaye requested the help of the French army, who agreed to assist the Chadians. The area which would see most of the fighting is the Aouzou Strip, the area which Libya had claimed as theirs. After some long fighting, the Aouzou Strip would finally fall in the hands of the rebels. Libyan forces delivered Libyan passports to the area, both as a gift and a reminder of the area's ownership. The largest of the rebel groups eventually merged into one, forming the First Liberation Army and the Second Liberation Army, which is just Frelonat. At the same time, though, a group of about 200 Libyans based in Chad launched a raid in southwestern Libya, the purpose of which was to sway the Libyan dictator's opinion of Chad. This proved to be successful. Libya was now almost entirely against Chad and saw them as a threat to their power. In 1971, a large part of the Chadian army and Libyan supporters attempted to stage a coup against Tombalbaye. While unsuccessful, this caused Francois to completely cut ties with Libya, and the Frelonat rebels were given access to a military base in Tripoli, the capital of Libya. In the middle of a drought, financial crisis, and a civil war, Tombalbaye began to become desperate. He arrested over 1,000 supposed enemies of the state and sold the disputed Aouzou Strip to Libya in order to stop Libyan support for Frelonat. While relations with Libya were somewhat repaired, Francois' own military began to think less of him. While Frelonat was losing most of its power, Tombalbaye started arresting some of his own officials once more. Paranoid that his power was being challenged, he arrested even more of those close officers for fear of mutiny. It didn't exactly go to plan for him, though, because in 1975, most of his forces revolted in the capital and killed him. And after a few more years of conflict over who would lead the country next, Hissène Habré would take control in 1979, but not after several coups by a military group called the GUNT. The Chadian Civil War was over, but there was another conflict to come. The leader of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, was not happy with how the civil war had turned out, and refused to recognize the legitimacy of Chad's new leader. In 1983, Libya and the GUNT began its occupation of northern Chad, south of the Aouzou Strip, in an attempt to overthrow Habré. However, the French intervened, restraining Libya to the 16th parallel, which would later be called the Red Line Partition. The map would now look like this. Chad was now partitioned into north and south, the north being held by the Libyan forces. Libya wished to push further, but they were stopped by the French at the 16th parallel. After the 1984 French intervention, there were no more major conflicts between Chad and Libya for 2 years, which allowed Habré to strengthen his forces and take the time to develop his army. What Libya really wanted at this point was full control over the Aouzou Strip, acquired by them during the Chadian Civil War. The Aouzou Strip was heavy with uranium deposits, something that was necessary for Libya. While the Libyan army was equipped with 8,000 soldiers, 300 tanks, artillery forces, including rocket launcher artillery, Soviet helicopters, and a sizable air force, Chad had another plan up their sleeve. Chad, while not boasting the might of the Libyan army, had a 10,000-strong military along with French support. The French gave the Chadians 400 Toyota Hilux pickup trucks. These are important. In the bed of these trucks were anti-tank missile launchers, and with this, Chad began its counteroffensive. In December 1986, the Chadian army would first target the military base of Fada, marking the beginning of the Toyota War. Defending the base was around 2,000 Libyan soldiers, but Chad sent around 4,000 men to the base. With their superior knowledge of the land, they easily took control of the base and only took 50 casualties in the process. The Libyans, on the other hand, took 784 casualties and around 100 of their tanks were destroyed. Libya was shocked at the devastating loss, and Gaddafi quickly enlisted all army reserves. Making a bold decision, he also ignored the French and ordered bombings below the 16th parallel. France, angered by the direct defiance, began bombing runs on Libya in retaliation. As a result, Libya's radio system was completely destroyed for 7 months. In March of 1987, the Chadian army launched a pivotal attack on Libya's main airbase. The base was heavily defended, with 5,000 soldiers, minefields, tanks, armored trucks, and of course, aircraft. The Chadians, however, swiftly defeated the Libyans, with only Toyota pickup trucks. The Chadians quickly assumed control of the airbase, setting back the Libyans a significant amount. Similar battles proceeded throughout the year, seeing Chad beat the absolute balls out of the Libyan military just by using pickup trucks. Libya began to withdraw its troops from Chad, and Habré was planning on retaking the Aouzou Strip. Libya was no longer seen as a regional military power, and the swift Chadian army was viewed as even more powerful. Even the United States grew interested in overthrowing Gaddafi and supplied Chad with $32 million in aid. Chad was nearly unstoppable now, and in August of 1987, they marched into the contested Aouzou Strip, inflicting heavy casualties once again. They managed to capture back the small town of Aouzou, on their way to restore their land. However, the French did not wish for Aouzou to fall in the hands of the Chadians, and the Libyans quickly expelled them from the town. This would be the first and only Libyan victory since the start of the Toyota War, and it was achieved by using the Chadians' strategies against them. Believe it or not, they used Toyota all-terrain vehicles to take back the town after a series of airstrikes. Using other tactics developed by the Chadians, the Libyans were able to take it back. Habré quickly responded with a surprise raid on an important airbase in Libya in what would be another brutal victory. France, who had already made it clear that they disapproved of the advance into the Aouzou Strip, feared that Chad would not stop and fully invade Libya, something which they would not tolerate. Seeing this, France forced Chad into a ceasefire in September of 1987, and the conflict would never start again, marking the end of the Toyota War. After a few years of political disputes, the Aouzou Strip was finally returned to Chad in 1994, and it remains Chadian to this day. The Toyota War was a conflict that showcased a powerful but exhausted army getting absolutely destroyed by pickup trucks, and all it accomplished was this. It was an important war, no doubt, but the concept of a nation with a full-fledged military getting pounded by pickup trucks is just too hilarious to think about. So, next time you drive your Toyota pickup down the freeway, know that you could be winning a war with that truck.